it is 7 o'clock on a Monday, so you know what time that means. It's time for your weekly episode of SCV Chat. Before we get started, the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily the views and opinions of the SCV, its GEC, any brigades or divisions, brigade camps, or other subsidiaries. Strictly ours. You'd think after 50 some odd weeks of broadcasting and saying that, I'd have it down pat, but evidently not. Hello, everybody in the chat. Glad to see y'all are on. You don't have to adjust your computer screen. You're not seeing double. We do have a set of twins on tonight. And we do have the producer actually sitting in front of the camera for the first time in forever. So y'all be nice to him or he'll run away again. And we don't want that. But how's everybody's? Oh, well, see, there he goes. Anyway, glad to be here and produce another episode. Like I said in our pre-live broadcast, reminder broadcast, we're going to be treating this just like one of our special episodes because we have two very special guests. We have Chief of Heritage Operations, Walter D. Donnie Kennedy, and his brother Ron. I believe you're Deputy Chief, right?
Oh, that was last year.
Last year.
Last time. This year, I'm just Donald's gopher.
Oh.
And a golden gopher he is.
Well, how are y'all doing?
We are great.
Doing wonderful, thank you.
We're so glad to have y'all on. I think you'd have to live under the rock if you're a member of the SCV and you've never heard of the world famous Kennedy brothers. So this is a very great pleasure to have you on, a really high honor, and just on behalf of everybody else who's normally on the show, I want to thank y'all for coming on because at one point it didn't seem like we were getting that much interest from folks, but we had interest from y'all, and that really meant a lot to us. But
Butler, Connor, y'all are doing a great job and a great service for not only the SCV, but for the Confederation and for traditional American values. And America should appreciate you. I know I do.
Well, a couple of years ago, my late daddy was outside of the Heritage Conference at the Laurel Camp used to put on, and he was talking to Brother Killian, and I was at Bible school at the time, and he called and checked in on us, and he looked at my daddy and he said, you know, you're the most hated man in America right now. You're an evangelical Southern white man who uses tobacco, and that is the most hated thing. So while the rest of America may not appreciate us, I'm glad y'all do. Before we get started, I do see some names in the chat I wanted to give a shout out to really quickly. Of course, the legend, past Commander-in-Chief Paul Grammer Jr. He's in there, and good evening, past Commander. And we also have AOT Commander Jimmy Hill in the audience tonight. So, Commander Jimmy, how are you? Glad to see everybody else on. And we're going to go ahead and jump into it with our questions for y'all this evening. Now, a couple years ago, I think it was 1994, y'all came out with the second edition of The South is Right, but y'all just came out with a third edition of The South is Right. So, Don, why did y'all decide to do a third edition, and how is it different from the second edition?
All right. Well, you know, in 1994, the world was a little bit different. We knew there were some bad things going on, but a lot has changed since then. In the second edition, if you'll remember, in chapter, I think it was chapter 12, we had a picture of a decapitated Confederate monument, and people started saying, "Hey, you know, y'all are just radical. You're extreme. It's not that bad. You know, you need to back off. The Kennedy twins, y'all just too radical." Well, look at what we've got going now. Look at Silent Sam. Just this weekend at Manassas Park, military park, the monument to Stonewall Jackson was desecrated. Things are going from bad to worse. And on the second edition, we kind of touched on that. But in this edition, we're really pushing that narrative even more. And one of the things that we're talking about is that just like Commander Gremlin started this 3 years ago, we have to tell our story. We have to get our information out. So that's why this third edition has about 40% new material, and we updated all the old chapters. So it'd be more current, for the 21st century.
And it's very important that we point it out to, this is not just a Southern issue. It is
Right.
near and dear to all of us who have Confederate ancestors, to all of us who speak with a Southern drawl. But this is an American issue, American values, the Christian values that made this country great. They're all being attacked. And the people that attack Confederate monuments and Confederate flags and Confederate tradition, people who started denigrating the South, these same people are now attacking, well, they even pulling down monuments to Lincoln, of all things. I can't cry bitter tears over that, but it is ironic that, hey, the people who hated us first are hating America. They're turning their back on America. And that's what we're talking about in the third edition, that the South was right in 1861 because America was right in 1776.
Yeah, man, I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, Harrison, that graphic's actually in the. I'm going to segue off the questions for a second, but if you'll pull up that graphic, and it is kind of. I do want to segue to not that one, the other one that I put up earlier. I'm making not that one. That's the book. Well, no, it's one that I uploaded earlier. This one.
There we go.
Right here. For everybody to remember. But it's kind of fitting that y'all bring that point up, especially with yesterday being America's real secession day, Independence Day. And I was listening to what goes for Conservative Talk local radio here in Jackson during the lunch hour today, and somebody was talking about how they were surprised to read a tweet from somebody that said that we shouldn't celebrate Independence Day because the only reason why America wanted to secede from Great Britain was because of the institution of slavery, wanted to keep on the institution of slavery. And that all boils back to that 1619 genocide project that they're trying to continue on with. But that popped in my head, and I wanted to get to it before we completely, before it left out of my head.
You're absolutely right in the fact that their attack again and slavery, that's their, the red herring they like to drag across the trail to make everybody look the other way, or it's a smoke screen, it's a diversion. And they do it because they are postmodernists, they're neo-Marxists, they don't believe in what our people believe in, that is the truth and honor and integrity that made Western Christian civilization what it is today. They believe in a neo-Marxist, postmodernist ideology, and to them, what they're saying is the truth, and what we're saying is falsehood. They don't use the same standard that we use. And it's unfortunate because so often I've heard SCV members say, all we got to do is tell the truth. No, their truth is not our truth. They don't believe in the principles of truth, of honor. They don't believe in evidence. They believe anything that promotes the leftist ideology is the truth. Anything that detracts from the leftist ideology is falsehood. Therefore, they're never hypocrites. We look at it, our people say, well, all we got to do is tell the truth, and they'll, no, they don't believe in Western Christian civilization and our definition of truth. So that's what our SCV members must get through their heads. It's going to take more than just us telling the truth. We've got to tell the truth to our own people, our own native Southern people. They've got to know the truth. We've got to tell it to them. But we're not going to convince the ideologues on the left that they are wrong and we are right. They don't accept our principles and our basic understanding of Christian civilization.
Well, I'm sorry I glitched out for most of that, but I agree with what I heard of it, and a hearty amen there. But in the preference of the third edition, this is one thing I really was interested when I first heard you mention this, Ron. It was at the 5th Brigade quarterly meeting down in Dixie, Mississippi, and you brought up this point, and you mentioned it in the preference of the third edition. but y'all point out the post-war / Reconstruction Agreement between the North and the South, and it has been broken by the federal government. Can y'all explain that agreement for us and what exactly is meant when y'all talk about that?
Yeah, it's post-war. Our Confederate ancestors accepted defeat. Not that they agreed with defeat, but they accepted defeat, and they made a gentleman's agreement with the victors. They said simply this: we'll make a bargain with you. We will not reassert the right of secession, the right of nullification, the right of local self-government as a sovereign state again, if you will allow us to honor our dead, honor our history, honor our heritage, and give us sort of the semblance of nominal control of our society, and basically leave us alone. And the South lived up to that bargain. You can look at the number of Southerners who they were awarded, but given medals of honor because of their absolute patriotism to America post-Civil War in parentheses, post-war for Southern independence, whether it was the Spanish-American War, whether it was World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the current endless wars that's going on now. Southerners have been at the forefront, and we've lived up to our part of the bargain. We kept our bargain, but not so with the liberal neo-Marxist federal government. As of 2000, they broke the bargain. They've removed the names of or in the process of removing names of Southerners from all of our military bases that was named for Southern heroes. They've taken the images and the monuments and the statuettes of Southern heroes out of the federal capital. They're in the process of removing monuments from battlefields even that honor Southerners. They broke the bargain. We didn't break the bargain. This bargain, and go back and look at the time when the federal government was accepting of the bargain. They had stamps that they issued, the federal post office stamps, honoring Confederate veterans. The U.S. Mint even minted a coin that showed Lee and Jackson. This was back in, I believe it was 1926.
28, I believe. 28, I think.
And we had in the United States Army, we had something called the Dixie Division. Donald and my our older brother was a member. That's the shoulder patch. You'll have to stand sideways to see it because Mr. Producer couldn't get it up right. That's the DD Dixie Division. They wore on the shoulder patch, and this was in World War I, World War II, Korea, and even up to the 1960s. This was there, and the Dixie Division proudly paraded in national parades. Look at that. What are they showing? The Confederate battle flag. There it is. And all this was done by the federal government. Now, they honored their agreement as long as they needed us. Now they no longer need us, so now they're in the process of exterminating us.
Now, I want to make one point here that Ron said the bargain is broken. It's very interesting who really made the comment that a bargain broken on one side is broken on all sides. And that was Daniel Webster of Massachusetts. Daniel Webster, a Yankee from Massachusetts, tells us clearly, if you don't keep one end of the bargain, the other end is also broken. So this is what Ron and I are trying to get across to our fellow Southerners and to America. You must keep your bargain or everything is off the table, is on the table now that was taken off. We now will pursue whatever is necessary to protect our rights and our freedoms and our heritage, not including, of course, violence. We already found out in 1861 to 65, violence won't get the job done. We can't do that. But what we're saying is this is a clean sweep. The bargain is broken. If necessary, we'll do whatever politically is expedient to regain our rights as Americans.
And that's the point that we are making. And if you'll read the preface of the third edition, you see from the very beginning that, look, this is different. We are now going beyond just a warning about cultural genocide and the destruction of American values. We are now in the midst of it. And unless we do something as a people, all is lost. But I point out in Dixie Rise and Rules for Rebels, there's five. I go over. There's other, but there's 5 countries that I show where there was an independence movement that won, and it was nonviolent, and it was successful. Some of them was a separatist movement, some were a secession movement, and some didn't win the secession movement, but the mere threat of secession caused the central government to back off and say, whoa, we can't do that. We gotta see if we can compromise with these people because they're serious about walking away. So that's what we're talking about. The bargain is broken. Everything is back on the table. Nullification as well as secession, the right of local self-government, even to the point, and we make this point also, of establishing provisional governments in every southern state, sort of like a shadow government that represents our interests and our needs. Because right now we are a stateless people. We don't have, and I say we, I'm not talking about just Southerners. I'm talking about every red state, red county voter. I'm talking about every conservative in America. We have no country to protect our interests, to promote our interests. And that's what we're talking about in the third edition of South Was Right. Look, we got to go beyond just education. We've got to step off into the political realm and establish in every red state, every red county, these provisional governments. And there's a lot that they can do to restore the traditional conservative America where there is real states' rights. And remember, the Constitution, and people out there who love the Second Amendment, boy, my gun rights are secured by the Second Amendment. Nothing is secured by the Second Amendment. Nothing, absolutely nothing. The Constitution is not self-enforcing. You've got to have a political entity to enforce those rights. Go back and look at the 1798 resolves, Kentucky, Virginia resolves. When the federal government breached its responsibility, what did the states do? They nullified the acts of the federal government. That's what we're talking about. We've got to get back to a Jeffersonian republic if we expect to win. And that's why the third edition is so much different than the second, because we say not only here's the problem, we say, hey, there's a solution to the problem.
Yeah, and it's, well, there's a writer out there, I'm sure y'all have read some of the stuff, Brian McClanahan. And of course, he's really big on the Abbeville Institute, which has been shadow banned, for lack of a better term. No, they haven't even been shadow banned. They've been outright banned by a fascist book, which we're probably on the chopping block at some point.
Eventually.
But, he says in almost every one of his podcasts is the phrase, think locally, act locally.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that is a key point of what y'all are trying to say in that. Before we segue over, Matt, being a former Army veteran, would like to get his take a little bit on what the Kennedy brothers have just said.
Would I? I think they covered it. Listen, I went to war for this country because I love this country. I love the idea of this country. And, as a Southerner, I always took pride in my culture, where I came from. And anybody that saw me in the barracks knew immediately that Matt was from the South. I mean, there was no doubt about it. All the way down to drinking, man. My whiskey consumption was about, it's got to be from Tennessee to drink it. It was all about being Southern. I mean, my music was Southern music, Southern rock and roll, whatever. It had to have something from home. And this is not what I signed up to defend. It's not anymore. and sending our Southern men and women into this federal government to fight this BS war that we've been fighting for 20 years. 20 years we've been in the same place doing nothing. We've accomplished nothing over there but deaths of Americans. That's all we've accomplished in 20 years over there. It made me closer to the guys that I went over there with, and thank God that I was with great Americans who love their country and love their fellow man. But you put us in situations now where I'm watching statues be torn down. I'm watching the flag be trampled on. I'm watching Olympic athletes turn their back on their own nation. Their own nation. You're there to represent us as a people, and that is BS. I'm telling you now. And what you guys are talking about, us being Southerners and being proud of where we're from, it is being stamped out every day. They make fun of our accent. Oh, well, you talk with the accent, so you must be a dummy. It's all that kind of stuff, and it's been. When are we gonna say enough's enough? We've had enough. We've had enough of it.
And Matt, if I might interject here, you're not the only one that feels that way, but also you're not the only American that feels that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of us, and I think the South can be the nucleus for changing this whole situation back to normal. If we don't, we've got to do something more drastic. But I think the South can lead the way in changing America back, protecting and promoting traditional American values. So, don't feel like that we're turning our backs on America. We're turning our backs up on what is the negative that's going on, and we're pushing for the positive, traditional American values. That's what I want my grandchildren to grow up understanding.
Exactly.
And
yes.
So goes the South, so goes America, so goes Western civilization as a whole.
That's right.
And that's just what we've seen, coming down the pike. I think it was Churchill that said, so goes America, so goes Britain, so goes America, so goes Western civilization, when he was dealing with the original fascist in the 1930s and 40s. But one of the chapters one of the new chapters rather, is titled Jim Crow, the Child of Yankeedom. I haven't made it to that chapter yet, although I did some light reading as it turned out. I was planning on doing some heavy reading this past weekend. But what were y'all trying to, what was the point y'all were making in that chapter?
Well, the main thing that we're looking at there is that, the South is always slammed as being the home of racism and racial hatred. And of course, the North is the bastion of goodwill, humanity, equality, of love, etc. ad nauseum. What we're pointing out here that, hey, look, Jim Crowism, which is racial segregation and discrimination, that came from first New England. New England infected the rest of the North, and then post-war, that type of condition was pushed into the South. You see a picture of Hiram Rebels here. He was the first African-American senator. He resigned from the Republican Party in disgust because he said that they were attempting to pit black and white Southerners against each other in order to benefit the North. So Jim Crowism that we're talking about here started in the North. Now, actually, Jim Crowism was established in the United States, not by Southern court, not by a Southern state, but by the federal Supreme Court in Plessy versus Ferguson.
Wait. That wasn't the Confederate States Supreme Court that made the segregation decision?
No. That was the United States Supreme Court. Now, the interesting thing about that is that there were 9 Supreme Court justices on the bench when that decision, when they canonized, when they legalized, when they enforced nationwide this Jim Crowism, there was 9 Supreme Court justices. 6 of them voted for it. 2 of them decided, well, we don't want to vote for it or against it. There was only 1 federal judge to vote against discrimination in America, and he was a Southerner. A Southerner. The only man on the Supreme Court to vote against Jim Crowism was a Southerner. And the guy that wrote the majority opinion on that was from, I believe, either Minnesota or Michigan. I think it was Minnesota. Michigan. And he based his decision on an 1847 Massachusetts, not Mississippi, Massachusetts law that segregated black and white children. Now, you tell me with that history of Jim Crowism that it's the South's fault? No, don't put that monkey on our back. We didn't cause this. Prior to the war, everyone that came down south from Europe were amazed at the close, almost familiar relationship between black and white people, slave and free. They could not get over it.
Well, so, you mentioned Mississippi, and of course the Highland Rebels, but another Mississippi legislator, I just had his name assessed.
Harris,
John Ace Harris. In his speech defending the appropriation for the Confederate memorial that's sitting outside the old Capitol, when he mentions that when he was enslaved and his mother died, it was the white missus of the plantation who became a surrogate mother to him. He also mentions that he was a Confederate veteran in that same speech, but nobody mentions that.
Right. And the point that Ron and I make throughout, especially in this chapter on Jim Crowism and in race relations, slaves did not like slavery in the South. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that they never hated their white neighbors and friends. Post-war, the Republican Party found it to their advantage to plant that seed of hatred between white Southerners and black Southerners, because so many Southerners, such as Beauregard and even Nathan Bedford Forrest, were civil rights advocates wanting the blacks and the whites to work together for their own betterment. That scared the bejesus out of those damn Republicans in Washington at that time, and they had to do something, so they injected this evil of racism and split the black and white people against each other, and we're suffering from that even to this day. And I get sick to my stomach when I hear people like Sean Hannity get on there bragging about the Republican Party loving the African Americans and the Democrats in the South hating the African Americans. He got it absolutely wrong.
And the thing of it is that the radical Republicans, which to me there's no difference, they're Republicans, they used an age-old technique called all empires use this on their conquered territories. It's called divide and rule. So you set one segment of that conquered society against the other section of the conquered society. You take one side and place them against the other. Let the two sides fight against each other, and then the empire gets to. It doesn't cost much to rule over them. The British did it against the Scots when they put the clans, CLAN clans, against each other. They did it in Northern Ireland when they put the Scotch Irish against the native Irish. They did it in India when they placed the Muslim against the Hindu. That's a classic. The Romans did it to all of their conquered people. It's a classic way a conqueror, an empire, rules very cheaply over its conquered territory. And when Donald and I look at the South, we don't see one nation indivisible with liberty and justice for all, because by God, there ain't no liberty and justice for the conquered territories. There's not any liberty and justice for those of us who believe in traditional American values. And we see this empire. But Donald, what about, let's see, Ralph Waldo Emerson? He's a classic Yankee. Didn't he love black folks?
He mentioned the fact that the abolitionists, and we have this cited in the third edition of The South Was Right. He mentioned the fact that the abolitionists hated slavery, not so much because they loved the black, but because they hated the blacks and they was wanting to get rid of the blacks. And I'm paraphrasing him, but you can see it in The South Was Right. And it also, this same Ralph Waldo Emerson hated the South. In The South Was Right, we cite him talking about how even if it breaks the national treasury, the stamping out of the South would be worth it, that he did not like Southerners. Now, interesting enough, his name is Ralph Waldo Emerson. His great-grandfather, Cornelius Waldo, was a very wealthy merchant in Massachusetts. Ron, what was one of his chief merchandise that he peddled?
What wasn't he a big promoter of human brotherhood and love and compassion for the black man?
As long as they was in chains.
Yeah, he was a slave merchant.
Right. So Ralph Waldo Emerson's great grandfather is an evil slave trader, but yet he hates the South. He never says anything negative about his own culture. You know, we would call that down south a damn hypocrite. And
Yeah,
that's what he was.
Well, speaking of the hypocrisy in Yankeedom, which is kind of an oxymoron a little bit, but about the only thing that when I was reading the 1619 project that I found interesting was they bring up the infamous story of Abraham Lincoln meeting with the representatives of the black community about shipping the emancipated slaves and the free people of African descent at that time back to Africa after the war was over. Because Lincoln says, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have my binder with me, but he says that our two races never get along. That's Lincoln saying that. That is Mr. Father Abraham saying that. But we don't hear that ever.
Right. Connor, about 2 weeks before he met his untimely death, Lincoln was dealing with General Butler, Beast Butler. We knew him down in New Orleans, and trying to arrange with Butler. He said, since we have one of the largest navies in the world at this time, can we get these Africans on enough ships to get them back to Africa? And Butler ran the numbers and everything, came back about a week later and said, no, it just can't be done. He said, but how about sending them down to Panama? We can use their labor to dig the Panama Canal. We can get them down and put them in Latin America. So even a week before Lincoln's death, he had not changed his mind and his view on the race. I don't care what these Lincoln lovers tell you, that ain't so.
And just remember that when he was debating Douglas in one of his speeches, and we cite this in The South Was Right, it's about close to 800 chapter endnotes in this book, but we cite it where Lincoln said that he wanted the new territories out west, that they're in the process of liquidating the Native Americans, and it was going to be held open. It was going to be left open for free white people. Didn't say anything about blacks. Didn't say anything about anyone else. Didn't say anything about the Chinese either. And so people who are in love with Lincoln don't know the truth. But the reason they don't know the truth is because the victor always writes and he enforces his version of history. That's why it's so important that we take the narrative back, that we put our information out. And again, we shouldn't be trying to convince the ideologues on the left. You're not going to convince Black Lives Matter or Antifa. You're not going to convince a Biden voter, most likely not a Biden voter. But we need to convince our own people. At one time, 90% of the Southern people supported their Confederate heritage, their Southern heritage. That number's down to about 65 to 70. Now, if you know anything about, trend lines, what direction is that trend line going? So if we don't do something, it's going to get below 50%. When that happens, we've got no chance in any legislature to turn these things around.
Ron and gentlemen, this is one reason why in the Confederate Legion we're so insistent that local camps do these things that we're trying to promote to get our message out to John Q. Public. We cannot spend our time talking to each other. Yes, it's fun talking to each other, and it's great to talk about our ancestors. But unless we give those dead Confederate veterans a voice, their side of the story will not be heard. That monument that you love, that tombstone that you clean, it cannot tell a story. That flag, that mega flag that you're so proud is flying on the interstate, you know what it represents, but your children and their children are being told the opposite. That flag cannot speak for itself. Gentlemen, we have to do it, and we've got to get our message out to John Q. Public. Well, what Ron and I used to call Billy Bible and Joe Sixpack. That's everybody. We've got to take the message out, and that's why this show is so important. And I love your motto, reclaiming the narrative 1 week at a time. We've got to do that. We've got to get serious about it. We cannot just let our camp do nothing but clean cemeteries and polish tombstones. There's nothing wrong with cleaning cemeteries and polish. That is an honorable job. But when you do that, be sure the local paper gets a picture with and saying the SCV cleaned this cemetery because, and this is, don't just say the Sons of Confederate Veterans cleaned the cemetery. You hadn't done a darn bit of good. Now you got to say the Sons of Confederate Veterans cleaned this cemetery of men who went to war to defend their homes and their families. You don't have to get into a discussion about states' rights. Just that simple little message. And keep doing that time after time. If you raise a giant flag, if you have a flagpole, if you have a monument, whatever you do, get that message out. You can do it on your social media. You can do it on various things. You can buy radio ads. We've got the Confederate Legion stands ready to help the camp. But camps, listen to me. If all you're doing is polishing tombstones, all you're doing is giving Antifa targets to destroy. You've got to get our people so motivated that the police and the local community will crack down hard on anybody that defaces a Confederate monument or tombstone. Right now, the police they're moving away from us. They're saying it's not worth it. It's not worth it because we don't offer a resistance to that type of movement. They don't know we're out there. Sorry, I didn't mean to
look,
no.
When you put out that news release and the paper doesn't pick it up, that's all right. Next month, send another. Next month, send another. But in addition to that, buy some radio time. You can get on your social media, have every one of your camp members on their Facebook or Gab or whatever they're on. Get the message out. And it's not a one-time thing. It's not, I raised this flag and I bought some ads on the radio and that's it. No, it should be every month. If you can't afford every month, then every other month. If you can't afford every other month, then do it once a quarter. But the information needs to go out. Donald recently was at a flag raising up in North Louisiana, and a beautiful flag they put up there. They put out a lot of publicity about it. And Donald made the suggestion, he and I was talking about, I said, look, come 4th of July, why don't you raise a Betsy Ross flag along with the Confederate flag and then buy radio ads and talk about secession month, July the 4th. In Louisiana, we've got the West Florida Republic. Well, heck, run up the Bonnie Blue flag and then advertise what that means. So people will start looking, well, what flag do they have up now? It's just, you've got to keep the effort flowing.
Mm-hmm. If you, I believe this in my heart of soul. If you just want to eat, meet, retreat, and get a history lesson, go join the Civil War Roundtable.
Here.
That's about all that they're good for.
And get out of our hair.
Yeah, no, get on board or get off the way.
That's right.
But you're just preaching just then. I didn't want to interrupt you, but it's we've been at it for about 40 minutes, and it's about time for us to take a break. And you mentioned radio ads and everything like that. And of course, you can find those ads, including the ad that we're about to run right now, on MakeDixieGreatAgain.com. Is it .org.com, or do we still have both URLs?
We got both, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
we always say .org. But.
Yeah, well, .org, go to MakeDixieGreatAgain.org. There's a ton of resources out there, and we'll get into the resources later on in the program after we talk about the Confederate Legion when we get back later on. But right now we're going to take a small little break, get you some water, use the bathroom if you need to. We'll be back in probably about 2 minutes. Mr. Producer, roll it.
When my mother was in college, she danced with Confederate veterans. To me, it wasn't that far away. My father knew this. My mother knew this. Almost 50 years ago, I joined the Sons of Confederate Veterans. In those days, we weren't concerned about saving monuments or any of those things. That wasn't necessary. In fact, none of us had any remote idea that it would ever come up. We can't just sit there and react. We have to be proactive. Or, as Robert E. Lee said, The best way to disrupt your enemy's plans is to strike first. Everyone should do all in his power to collect and disseminate the truth, in the hope that it may find a place in history and descend to posterity. History is not the relation of campaigns and battles and generals or other individuals, but that which shows the principles for which the South contended and which justified her struggle for those principles. If you're looking for some place to be where you think you're going to accomplish something to save our history, go to the Sons of Confederate Veterans. I'm Thomas Lee Jesse. I'm a descendant of Private Daughtery Gilmer, a Confederate veteran.
And we're back. Well, while we're waiting on, well, Matt's back. I'm waiting on Walter D. Donnie Kennedy to come back on. I had to change out from my headphones. The rain slacked up a little bit here in the central part of Mississippi, and I can take these headphones off and plug my phone back into the charger. While we're waiting on him to come back, again, MakeDixieGreatAgain.org. There are a bunch of great videos out there. There's even one with me in it. It's my least favorite of the videos, if I'm to be honest. But give that a chance. Give that a look over. Listen to the radio ads. They're, about 30 seconds long?
Yes.
And they range from anything from secession, American secession to military veterans, and anything in between. Go give them a listen and try to get them on your local stations. And you know what your people are listening to nowadays. If your county or town has a local, country music station or talk radio station, and it doesn't have to, do anything, as far as cost. I mean, they may will run it as a public service announcement ad because we're a 501c3 organization. But it's taken us. It's going to take us all pulling together, pulling that same rope, and moving on to preserve our heritage. But
Connor, can I just came back and grabbed my quick Coke. No, Pepsi. I quit Coke. I do Pepsi now. But anyway, any SCV camp that wants to run these radio ads, and I'm assuming that's what you were talking about.
Yes.
We will partner with you. So let's say you got a small camp and all you can afford is $100 worth of ads. As long as we've got membership dues coming in that's buying ad that we can buy, I will help you. I will get your ad to you. I'll double your money. We can, if you put up 100, if we've got it in our account, we'll give you another 100. You'll have $200 worth of ads. Now, $200 may not sound like a lot, but a lot of those small radio stations, you can get a minute spot for $15, $20. So that's quite a few little ads there you can run. If every camp would do that, at least on a quarterly base, and like I said, Ron said, if you can't do it monthly, do it every other month. Can't do it every month, do it every third month, every quarter, or something of that nature. If every SCV camp, and we've got around 838 SCV camps in this confederation, if every camp would run these ads quarterly even, we could cover the nation, because our camps go up to the out west, up north, everywhere. And we could cover the nation with this information. Number one, we're going to let the world know the Sons of Confederate Veterans is a viable organization and it's defending its cause. It will encourage people because we're going to tell the truth. They're going to hear something they've never heard before. I have in one ad, we're talking about slavery existed in Massachusetts for 72 years longer than existed in Mississippi. Slavery is a national, not a Southern deal. So, and we talk about positive things about the South. Our people here, that 60 to 65% that still support us, will secure that number and start regaining what we've lost. Plus, Connor, the most important thing of this, once we do this, politicians hear this. Right now, they don't fear us. They don't even know we have 38 SCV camps. Say what? Who said that?
Well, I think it was a little bit of a lag audio-wise. Okay. sometimes
Okay.
that'll happen.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
But look,
Go ahead, Ron.
the real important point is we were talking about when you clean the tombstones, clean the grave sites, when you set up a flag, whatever you're doing, make sure the influence agents, the agents of influence in your community hear about that. You send them a letter, a little old one-page letter. This is what we're doing. So the Rotary Club gets it, the Kiwanis Club gets it, the Knights of Columbus gets it, the local ministers get it. And most important, every elected official in your area gets it who may be willing to think conservatively towards us. Now, there's no need to send one to a Black Lives Matter candidate or elected official. But make sure you send these letters out. Make sure the world knows what you're doing. And again, if they just get one, it makes no difference. If they get 1,000, boy, it makes a big difference. Every member.
Yeah,
If it's month after month, that's another thing. You just got to keep doing. So many of our camps say, well, we tried that and we didn't get any results. One of the worst things I hear is camps saying, well, we ran $100 worth of ads and we didn't get a new member. The ads does not generate membership. What it does is cultivate the field. So when you go out there at your events on a one-to-one dealing with people, they'll know who you are and they'll know good things that you are doing. And then they'll want to become a member. These ads do not generate members. It makes it easier for you to get that member.
And do camp members want your story to be told by the Southern Poverty Law Center, or do you want it to be told by us? And it's our job to do that.
And one thing that I've been pushing, at least here in Mississippi, is everybody needs to get with their fellow veterans' rights organizations.
Right.
Because, the SCV is a historical fraternal organization, genealogical organization, but at the same time, in my opinion, when General Lee gave us that charge and he said that we are to defend the Confederate soldier's good name and we are to guard his history, that turned us into a veterans' rights organization.
Absolutely.
And if we are in link with the VFW, the DAV, the Marine Corps League, the American Legion, whatever veterans organizations out there, and they're working with us, because we're just the low-hanging fruit. We've said it till we're blue in the face, and everybody's seeing it now. How is what politician in their right mind wants to be labeled, in the South at least, wants to be labeled anti-veteran?
Yeah. Listen, every county in Tennessee, for at least, has a veteran service officer that works at usually City Hall or the county seat. But get involved with him, find out where these organizations are, him or her or whoever works in the VSO office. But that's a place to start, and you got to start in your local communities. You've got to start at home in your local communities. You can't just jump up to the national level or to the federal government and be like, oh, hey, we want this done. They're not going to listen to you. But you guys right here on the ground, the people that you can go into their office and talk to, they'll listen to you.
Case in point with this, in Harrison's or in the producer's home county, his home county monument came under attack. Well, a former president of the local NAACP chapter got on their local news channel and said, no, this Confederate monument needs to stand here because I too am a veteran. Imagine going and seeing your brothers, your fathers blown up. You would want their headstone, their memorial to remain. And that was one of the best things we ever got PR-wise in Mississippi. But, the veterans understand that we are a veterans' rights organization. But let's jump back onto the book really quickly, because if not, we'll get on that soapbox and we'll stay on the soapbox. Anyway, so in Chapter 10, it's another new chapter, and it's titled Only Empires Are Invisible. Is the United States an invisible empire? And before y'all answer, not all empires are bad, because SCV chat, we're trying to grow our own media empire here.
Ours is good, theirs is bad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the one of the problems that all empires consider themselves indivisible. In a letter to Lord Acton, Robert E. Lee, it's about 1870, he wrote a letter to him, and he said, "Look, if those people," I can just hear him saying that. He wouldn't say "damn Yankee." There I am cussing. I'm sorry. Well, wait a minute.
Damn
Is
Yankee.
damn Yankee a cuss word, or is that a proper
no.
noun?
It's proper noun.
Okay, but anyway, he said if those people use their victory to destroy states' rights and create a supreme federal government, then the United States will become just like all other empires, aggressive abroad and despotic at home. And that's why it's so important for us to understand this, that the America that we knew prior to the war did not survive the war. What we have now is a supreme federal government that has an empire that it must maintain. And one of the ways it maintains it over the South is, like we said previously, divide and rule. But, you know, it's not that unusual for empires. Once they get a taste for blood, they can't stop. So after the federal empire took over the South and turned us into an economic and political colony and impoverished us, they then went over to the Kingdom of Hawaii, a kingdom that they had diplomatic relations with, and they invaded that nation, took away that democratic or constitutional monarchy, and installed a bunch of Yankees. One of them's last name was Dole, D-O-L-E. Dole, pineapple. Does that ring a bell to anybody? But at any rate, they took over and dispossessed the native Hawaiians. And that just continued on and on and on. But remember, empires always consider themselves indivisible. King George III, when the 13 colonies decided, look, we are no longer going to live under an oppressive government. We're going to rid ourselves of the British Empire. We're going to secede. Well, King George said, oh, no part of my empire can secede. My empire is indivisible. So, he fought a war, and he fought a war against what he called rebels. Imagine that, rebels. The patriots were not dearly beloved. They were called rebels, and they did it for a reason. But in modern times, when the Baltic states wanted to secede from the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, he said, oh, no. Well, we'll talk about things, but you cannot leave the Soviet Union. Our communist union is indivisible, so you can't leave. Well, he lost out on that one too. So it's very important to understand that empires always consider themselves indivisible. And what a lot of SCV members get upset with the Kennedy brothers is when we point out that, hey, way back in before or during the war, there was someone else, some group of communists in Great Britain that would believe in an indivisible empire. What was that, Donald?
It's the guys by the name of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And interestingly enough, speaking of communist influence in the quote, Civil War, the War for Southern Independence, Friedrich Wiedemeyer was a general in the Union Army. He was an avowed communist, a friend of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Now, I've looked throughout the generalship of the Confederate Army, and I've never found a communist there, but there were several communists and hundreds of radical socialists in the Union Army. But Friedrich Wiedemeyer, he wrote a letter to Friedrich Engels. Engels is Karl Marx's co-author of the Communist Manifesto. And Engels told Friedrich Wiedemeyer that by establishing the United States, and I'm paraphrasing this, you can find it later, but in the book, he said that by making the United States into an indivisible nation, that would further the cause of the proletariat, that is communist revolution in America. So The indivisible union concept is diametrically 180 degrees opposed to what our founding fathers gave us and wanted for us. It's exactly what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels wanted. And interestingly enough, even Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf brags about Lincoln making the United States into a one nation instead of having all this, what he calls statal rights. So,
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I saw an article about 3 years ago, and I wish I would have brought it up or had a copy of it. But 3 years ago, I read an article from a Harvard professor that said right now he believes that we're in a cold civil war in this country. So I want to know, like a cold war from the
right. Well,
so,
is that not what you're seeing with the destruction of, and of course, that civil war that he's referring to, I think, is a civil war between those of us who believe in traditional American values. It goes far beyond just conservative, Confederate ideas, but it goes into traditional American values. Those of us who believe in those, as opposed to the blue state people who believe in secular humanism and that man is the supreme authority in all ideas. Though that's where the Cold War is going on, and a lot of people, especially the communist influence, would like to push it into a hot war because that would leave them in a position just like in Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution, where they could take over.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out because I mean, you say that we're only empires are indivisible, but it's showing right now there are cracks in us right now.
Oh, it's no doubt about it. It's cracks in the what used to be the United States, and what actually that crack happened in 1865 is just getting worse, more pronounced now, and it's encompassing more people than just Southerners now. That's what makes it so dangerous, and so potentially advantageous to the communist type of revolutionaries. That's why we've got to do our job correctly to prevent them from taking over.
Well, it's kind of like what Granny Clamp had said when she said it was the war. It was when the Yankees invaded America.
Correct.
One of the most impressive things that I saw during the recent election and the debacle there afterwards was two different cases in which it was a Roman Catholic a traditionalist on a blog. He was talking, they were having a panel discussion before the election, and one of them, of course, their big issue, and it should be all Christians' big issue, is unlimited abortion. I mean, they said, look, this is just terrible. But Biden was promoting it. And he said, someone asked this guy, well, what's going to happen if Biden wins the election? Now, this was before the election. And this was a whole panel. And he sort of stopped and looked up and said, well, I think some states might try to secede. Now, as shocking as that is, because 30 years ago, the Kennedy brothers was the only one saying anything that radical. But the shocking thing to me wasn't so much of what he said, was the fact that there was a non-reaction among the panelists. That they didn't all go, oh, that's treason, that's un-American. They just sort of said, yeah, that's right. Then after the election, there was this another Catholic. Now, I'm Protestant, but I follow all different groups when they're fighting the devil. But this was a conservative Catholic blogger who was writing for a conservative Catholic journal, and he wrote a large column basically saying that it's time for Catholics to consider the idea of secession, because if we can't save all the unborn in America, let's at least save them in the red states and red counties. So what Donald and I said 30 years ago in the South was right has now become more mainstream. And this this guy was from New Hampshire, so we got one from Detroit, Michigan, and another one from New Hampshire. These aren't Southerners talking. These are people who are looking at the current government and saying there's something very wrong and we need to fix it. How do we fix it? And that's what we talk about in the 3rd edition of The South Was Right.
To follow up on that, I heard on a Christian radio station. This is a nationally syndicated Christian radio station, but they were Protestants and they were located out of the deep South state. But they even remarked that secession looked like something that was something to be talked about, and nobody was upset. And here's the thing that Ron and I have tried to convince everybody is that if secession is available, you'll never have to use it. You only need secession when the federal government knows it's the king and can force you to do anything it wants to do. I tell people my daddy used to sleep in a bedroom with a double-barrel shotgun behind his bed, ready to shoot anybody that tried to break into our house. No one broke into our house. Why? Because he had a shotgun there to kill the thief if he tried to steal or break in and harm us. He didn't have to use it because he had it. Now just think, if he didn't have it, who would be afraid to break into his house? So you don't need the right. You don't need the right of secession unless you don't have it. If you have it, you can force the federal government to abide by the Constitution. That Ron said earlier, the Constitution is not self-enforcing. This is what we mean. We, the people of the sovereign states, must have a means to force the deep state tyranny of the federal government to abide by the Constitution and heal to our demand rather than us healing to their demand. That potential was lost in Appomattox, and since then we've had an indivisible empire growing more aggressive abroad and despotic at home. Robert E. Lee was correct.
Well, that kind of goes to our next question.
Now they got F-15 and nukes too, so
yeah. The next question, where it seems that it's more and more because secession's become more and more mainstream. And I know just from I'm a little bit of an Anglophile, but I know it is becoming more mainstream because look at Brexit.
That's right.
Look up the breakup of the Soviet Union and the communist bloc. But do y'all think that it's becoming more and more mainstream?
Oh, absolutely. It's becoming more and more mainstream. I even saw, and I can't remember the area, but there's one area in the city of Atlanta that wants to secede from Atlanta because of the horrible crime. I'm thinking that perhaps we need to start a movement here in New Orleans or Louisiana to have the tourist center of the Bouquerie and Canal Street and the uptown area and lakefront all turned into a tourist center run by the state, and let the heathens have the rest of New Orleans because they've got it all right now. But there's a lot, and there's 6 counties in Oregon that voted to secede from Oregon and join Idaho. I mean, yeah, it's a more of a mainstream thing, but you got to remember, Patrick Henry warned us. He said, "Look, y'all are going into a union with a bunch of people who are not like us. They are commercialists. They are materialists. They are more concerned about the almighty dollar. Matter of fact, that's where the term originated, the almighty dollar up in Yankeedom. They are not like us. They are not spiritual. They don't believe in the values that we believe in. Plus, they have a majority. If you go in union with these people, they're going to use their majority vote to control Congress and to oppress the South." We had to have a means. So we thought we did. We passed the 9th and 10th Amendment. That was one of the conditions for the Constitution, for the sovereign states to enter the Constitution. Those amendments very plainly say, hey, secession, but they'll plainly say what it says is that not every right that the sovereign state has can be listed. Just because it's not listed does not mean it's not there. The only power the federal government has is those that we specifically gave to it and or delegated to it. We did not delegate the right to maintain an indivisible union. So the right of secession and the right of nullification. And as we point out in this third edition, there were a number of times in which the sovereign states nullified unconstitutional acts of the federal government under the original constitutional Republic of Sovereign States that was established, the constitutional one, not the illegitimate one that we have now. And again, it was John C. Calhoun who noted that the Constitution is not self-enforcing. You cannot rely, was it, I think it was Madison maybe that said the Constitution is but a mere parchment barricade. You know, it won't preserve, I'm sorry, you gun rights people, it won't preserve, the Second Amendment won't preserve your rights to keep and bear arms if we don't have the political means by which to enforce that right. And that's why it's so important to understand secession and nullification. But the thing that I love to point out is that the neo-Marxist left, they want to dominate. They want to dominate and they want to destroy us. That is their aim. We, on the other hand, say, let's have a nation in which nullification and secession are an accepted part of the country. Then we can harmonize the two sides. The blue states, y'all want to be blue, go blue. I told a religious group once that if the people in Massachusetts want to have, New York now want to have partial birth abortion, you know, I'm against it. But that's their decision. If they want to go to hell, that's their business. I don't want any part of it. But I know there's a lot of red counties in New York State that would like to nullify that decision. So we can harmonize the group. The red and the blue voters can live together as long as we leave each other alone. And remember, that's what Jefferson Davis said. All we ask is to be left alone. We'll run our area. We'll solve our problem. Yeah, we got problems to solve, but so does everybody else. We'll solve it, and we'll solve it in a manner that's good for everyone. That's why the idea of secession and nullification actually harmonizes American government, and you can keep the Union together, especially in order to maintain a strong national defense. And that's what the primary purpose of the Union was, to strong national defense, a free trade zone among the sovereign states, and protect the borders. The strong national defense and the protecting the borders is probably not being done now.
There's a whole hell of a lot that's being done that shouldn't be done. Mm-hmm. Especially when you have the executive branch ruling by, pretty much executive fiat by signing freaking executive orders. I just used executive 3 times in one running on. But, you know, doing that left and right to try to subvert the Constitution. I mean, you're talking about, you know, the Second Amendment not being protected by the Constitution, or nothing really being protected by the Constitution, especially when you have somebody in Washington, D.C., no matter which political party they're a part of, signing a piece of paper, and then suddenly everybody acts like it's law. I mean, and we kind of see that in states, you know, that are popping up as Second Amendment sanctuary states, right, where they're pretty much saying that they are going to nullify anything that is passed by the federal government or that is said by the executive branch that's not a legal law.
Yeah, that's the important thing too. I know there's a city in Texas that declared itself a sanctuary city for the unborn. There's all kind of counties who've declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuary counties, and there's states doing the same thing. So we're at the good point where, like Donald said earlier, the South should be the catalyst. We should be the one leading this charge, not just for our heritage, but for all American values, especially constitutional rights and liberties. We should be at the forefront. Now, I'm not saying that the SCV needs to be doing this, but SCV members who are well educated and understand these principles need to be leading that charge.
But the SCV does have a primary fundamental role to play in educating, motivating, and activating first our people and then spread it across the nation. So we can do that. We can educate, we can motivate, we can activate. The political agenda goes into another area, but under our 5013C that we intend to maintain as long as this organization exists, we can educate, we can motivate, and we can activate. That's part of what we do as an organization. So that's no problem there. Other things will be done by our membership as they are educated, motivated, and activated outside of the 5013C organization.
Connor, you can tell we're from Mississippi because we like to get on the stump and, filibuster. I think the Kennedys have used up most of your time.
Oh, no, that's fine. In fact, that's why we dispensed with the normal trivia and other things and jumped right in with y'all. In fact, we've had several people messaging us behind the scenes asking when are we going to open it up for them to ask questions to the Kennedy twins. And we're going to go ahead and open the floor up now to y'all in the chat who have questions. If you put one up previously, I can't scroll up that far. The producer may be able to scroll up and we can bring them on and I'll read them out. But the first one, it kind of want to, hit on while we're rounding things up with the book. Explain what is the March to a Million?
I'm gonna let that's Ray Shores. He is pushing. Ray Shores, y'all all know Ray Shores from Victory Flags. He's pushing the idea that if we sold 140,000 second edition, that we need to sell 1 million third edition in order to really make an impact in our South and society at large. And that's his march towards 1 million. And we're sort of there rah-rahing for him. He's a marketing expert, and he's got a lot going on with that. I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Well, the main thing I want to chime in is Ron and I wrote this book not to make money, but to bring information to our people. Ron and I both are professionals. I guarantee you I can make more money giving anesthesia in an hour's time than I'll ever make selling books. So that's not what this is about. The 1 million books out there means there's 1 million people who will be motivated by these ideas we're talking about. If we can get it out there, we can really stimulate people and we're educating, motivating, and activating those people to become activists for the cause of freedom. And gentlemen, that is ultimately what we're about, American freedom.
All right.
There's a good question up, if you see it, that Nathan Paul has asked, what's our plan to educate the public since the mainstream media has crafted such a negative and foul misrepresentation about the South? And I'm going to let you jump into that. But one thing I want to mention is that we must have all of our camps send us the name, the telephone number, the email address of friendly local podcasters, as well as radio hosts, talk show hosts, people that
newspapers
are newspapers, columnists, people that you think at least are fair-minded. We don't want to worry with the liberals, so that when we have a news release, we don't have to go to AP and hope that they'll pick it up, because they won't. What we want to do is to be able to send it directly to those people who will pick it up, and some will use it, sometimes they won't, but they'll see it and they'll know we're there, and it'll be going on continuously, month after month after month. And that's from the national headquarters, the Heritage Campaign.
Yeah, and essentially what we're looking at, that's why we're trying to break into various camps, talking to camps and divisions. about getting involved using the tools that we're creating in the Confederate Legion to get this message out. And what the thing that Ron said, I call this a Southern friendly media outlet. Just think if we had an event up at, say, at the headquarters or at the opening of the museum on a special event, if we can put that out all across the Confederation to friendly media outlets, just think how many people we could contact. I'm going to give you a quick example. I live in a little area called Point, Louisiana. It's not even on the map, but within 30 miles of me, there are at least 2 good weekly newspapers that will carry most of the news releases that we send to them. They won't get them all, but they'll get most of them. Just think if every division could come up with 10 to 15 such outlets, and we send that out across the Confederation, look how many people we would contact. We're talking about contacting millions of people who have never heard of the SCV or ever heard anything positive about their Southern heritage. So, and I think Jimmy Hill just wrote that I'll be speaking at the ALT meeting in October 2nd in Elm Springs. Thank you, Jimmy, for reminding me of that, because I want to tell all the other armies and division, let us know, Ron and I, and we'll get other people to come with us, and we'll put on a mini conference about how to get the message out, how to take back the narrative, how to put the enemy on their heels, how to not only to defeat them, but to crush them. I will not be satisfied until the enemy is literally crushed beneath our heel.
Donald, tell them about the unofficial survey you took at the Trump rally, because most people don't understand that. I mean, SCV members, we are sort of like we're in a bubble. We all know all this, but tell them what you.
Yeah, this was about during the previous election when Trump was running for re-election. I was at a campaign stop here in North Louisiana, and there was about 10 to 15,000 people there. And I went down. Of course, we were on the outside waiting, so I went down and made a survey. This is not. It's just an unofficial survey. And I would ask people, number one, are you proud of your heritage as an American? Well, of course they are. They wouldn't be there. Are you proud to be a Southerner? Well, yes, absolutely. Do you think Southern history and heritage is good and should be taught? Oh, yes. Are you a member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans? Cricket, cricket, cricket. Have you ever heard of the Sons of Confederate Veterans? 90% had never even heard of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. Those who had heard, most of them thought it had something to do with reenacting. Now, people, if politically motivated conservatives, 90 to 95% have never heard of the SCV, how do you think the politicians are going to be upset, or how do you expect them to get upset when we complain to them? They never heard of us. Nobody's heard of us. We've got to get this message out.
Well, our cousin Vinny, and I'm going to shout it out to Vinny. Vinny, if you've been following, is in New Jersey. He's being held as a prisoner of war up there. He says that the Relentless Patriot podcast loves the SCV. And Vinny, if you don't mind, send Harrison the podcast information, and we'll get them to the Kennedy twins so they can reach out to it.
Absolutely. Could I say something for Vinny's sake?
Please.
Ron and I in the Southwest, we talk pretty nasty about Yankees. But listen, I have Northern grandchildren. There's a difference between Northerners and Yankees. Northerners are just like the rest of us. They are Americans who have traditional American values. They love those values, and they want to protect those values. Most of them feel very warm towards Southern heritage. At least they're not opposed to, they're not attacking. Yankees are the ones who are leading the attack against us. They're no different than in 1861. So if you remember in 1861, one of the greatest fears Lincoln had was that the North, all the copperheads, as they called them, would rise up against him. And that's why he crushed them with military force, political opposition. Why did Van Landingham get thrown into jail? Van Landingham was a Democrat opposed to Lincoln's policy from Ohio, and he got banished from the country by a military tribunal. And that's just one. Francis Scott Howard, the grandson of Francis Scott Key, was thrown in prison in Maryland because he was opposed to Lincoln's war policy. This man was a tyrant. Lincoln was a tyrant, and he was tyrannical to Northerners, just like he was to Southerners. He's just a little bit more tyrannical to us. So when I talk about Yankees, that's one group. There's a lot of good Northerners, and we're in this fight together, Northerners and Southerners who believe in traditional American values.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Harrison actually has a question he typed in because I guess he's afraid to ask it. But Harrison, ask your question.
What can teachers do to fight the brainwashing system that is in our schools? As a future teacher, I would like to know what y'all think as a way to combat hardcore brainwashing I've been seeing going on in colleges and in high schools.
You know, for me, I think the easiest thing to do is just get some facts out. Don't pontificate on what you believe right now, because you will get shown the door quickly. But you can, and this Thomas Woods, if y'all know Dr. Thomas Woods, great conservative blogger and writer. When he was a teacher in New York, he told me that he was teaching at one of the universities in the North. He's Harvard graduate now, Harvard and Columbia. But anyway, he told me, he said, what I would do was teach the Southern view and the Northern view and let the students come to their own conclusion. He said, isn't it strange? Most of them decided the South was right. He said, but I would never get there and say, hey, you know, the South was right on this and the North was wrong. He said, this is what the South said, why they fought and why they said it wasn't over slavery. Here's what the North said and so, you know, let the students make up their own mind. At least, even if they don't agree with the Southern viewpoint, they will come away understanding, by God, there are actually two sides to every coin. Amazing, isn't it?
Hey, Donnie, so what you're basically saying is just teach facts.
Facts, yes, right. But you know, and remember, facts is dry. They are dry. We've got a guy here, Ted Brody is his name. He's a SCV. He was division commander, camp commander. He was a teacher in I think middle school. You would be surprised how much influence that man has had on young people. But he would come dressed as this character or that character, and he'd give the information, but he'd give it fairly and in an almost entertaining way. And the kids, we'd march on parades, and all you'd hear people from all ages hollering, "Hey, Mr. Brody! Hey, Mr. Brody!" So you know that's what I'm pointing out. You can't just present facts. You got to be entertaining almost with it.
And look, beyond the classroom right now, because that's a tactical effort, but a strategic effort has to also be made, and that's outside the classroom. That's why we suggest the creation of provisional governments to serve as a lobbying effort as well as an information public relation effort for the cause, but a lobbying effort so that we can go into the state houses and the state legislatures. But we got to have the people. Remember what Brian McClanahan says. We got to have local people who support the lobbying effort, who'll get on the phone and call their representatives, not once, but day after day, send them emails, send them letters, etc. And what we want is to, the next time, the Betsy board here in Louisiana, which is the one that controls all the money for the universities as well as local schools, next time they come to the legislature wanting more money, which they always do, then we're going to say, okay, we're not going to support this until you put a rider in this bill that will require fair and equal treatment of the Southern heritage, Southern viewpoint in all of your history and all of your humanity classes. And you will also protect and encourage the speakers to be brought into campus, and anyone Antifa BLM type who tries to disrupt that speaker, that will be a felony, and he'll be arrested, or he or she, and their transcripts, if they're a student, will be frozen, never to be seen again. Now we're talking about saying, look, we are the taxpayers. We have a right for our money to be used to teach our children and our grandchildren values that we believe in. We're not telling the instructor that he must teach this or cannot teach that. There's just got to be a fair and balanced treatment of the cause of Southern heritage, Southern history, Southern values, Southern culture, as well as all of American values for that matter.
You know, I've seen something recently in communities. I've seen a lot of communities coming together and they're homeschooling their kids. I believe that's an untapped resource for us as educators, as people that have education in Southern history and the history of the war between the states. These are untapped resources that we should be reaching out to in our communities. Find out if there's a homeschool in your community and reach out to them and get them involved in some programs around. Like right here in Columbia, we got the National Confederate Museum. We'd love to have homeschool groups come through and tour the home. And we can teach them a little bit of Southern history while we're at it.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't mention homeschooling because you asked about the public education, but both in homeschooling and in private schooling, we need to be sure that they're getting correct information. You know, my children and my grandchildren, at least half of them are homeschooled. So I really appreciate homeschooling. Where I go to church, we have a classical Christian school. And we want to make sure that those people also know that we exist and we're out there to offer assistance. And we can do that. And by doing this is one way we can reach young adults, young adults. Listen, those kids in high school, they're going to be adults soon. And that's just one of the ways we can do it.
Well, and also, this is the one thing I wanted to hit up on is if you see a program like SCV Chat where we're reclaiming the narrative 1 week at a time, share it. Vinny, I know you do, but I mean, other people, you know, if you have a grandkid or you have a kid or something on there, because it's not just all history. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Southern language, which is its own independent language, as well as Southern dialect. You know, the next couple weeks, we're going to probably bring Carl Jones on here and talk about barbecue again and the importance of that on Southern culture and American culture. But share stuff like this. If you know of a syndication or anything like that presents the South in a positive light, you have to do that. And it's like Michael Hardy was talking about a second ago. You know, YouTube is a great opportunity. Facebook Lives are a great opportunity. Things like that, because seldomly do kids now even pick up a book and do anything. You know, if you're a teacher and you want to
get all their history from Wikipedia.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt. But you know, create an actual here's the points of this argument. Here's the points of this argument. Let them see. But the thing I want to talk about was the education of our membership. It seems like, for example, we my camp, we do a candlelight service every single April. That's how, you know, that's our April meeting. And if you've never done it, it's a beautiful service and it'll make you tear up. But you sit there and, you know, we go around the room and you name your Confederate ancestor's name. You blow out a candle in his memory. If you don't have a Confederate ancestor or you don't know your Confederate ancestor, we give you a card with the original, because we're named after a particular unit, a member of the soldier who was in that unit. But we had somebody in our camp who'd been in there for a year who didn't even know his ancestor's name. We, as the SCV, as the gentlemen who are supposed to be there, we're supposed to guard the Confederate soldier's history. We first have to know the Confederate soldier's history ourselves. We have to know about the things that y'all have been talking about Patrick Claiborne, or, you know, not just Patrick Claiborne, but Patrick Henry, the original 13th Amendment, this, that, and the other, so that, you know, when it comes time to be able to defend the Confederate soldier's good name and guard his history, we know that history more than just, I like the Confederate flag, which I love, but I like the Confederate flag, and I think it should fly everywhere, especially on I-95, you know, with the mega flag, just because.
Can I mention something? I mention something here, and this is a little self-serving, so forgive me, but on the Kennedy Twins webpage, I have a position paper, number 1, for my candidacy as a future Lieutenant Commander in Chief of the SCV. But that position paper talks about what we need to do for retention. And one of the problems that I've seen in my 35 plus years as a member of the SCV is we get new members in and they don't actually feel welcome and at home. They don't understand what all is available or what should be done and how we do it. So if you got an idea, just to go to the Kennedy Twins webpage and look to the left, you'll see position paper number 1. And I'm talking about retention and how the Lieutenant Commander in Chief should every month on every new member for the first year send him a letter, let him know what's going on in the SCV, what's going on in the Confederate Legion, what needs to be done, and how can you be involved, and keep them informed and get them, I call it a mentoring or tutoring process for new members. So this is one way I believe we can maintain, can really stem some of this loss of membership within 1 or 2 years. So because I've talked to too many people that say, well, I joined, I can go to some of the camp meetings, but I feel lost. I don't know what's going on. My heart's right, but I don't feel like I know what's going on, so I'm not comfortable. And so they end up backing out. So take a look at that. That's one of the things. I've got other position papers that I'll be writing between now and the next election season. But just take a look at that. And even if I'm not elected, somebody needs to do this. I think I was talking when we were in Kentucky with Jason, our current Lieutenant Commander in Chief, and interesting enough, he said, "That's funny you mentioned that because I've been thinking about doing something like that." So we need to do something like that to mentor and tutor these young new members, whether they're 90 years old, they're new members, or whether they're 20 years old and new members. They need to get something from national, make them feel like they're needed, and point them where they can find information and how to get involved and what needs to be done right now.
I just recently had a meeting with one of our new members at my local camp here, and I'm sure all of you have ran into this, because he said, I need to talk with someone because I joined the SCV. I really wanted to do something, but I don't see that there's anything for me to do. What's going on with the SCV? And of course, he was really sort of upset that we haven't done anything with outside the 501c3, So, and I said, well, we're working on that. But I met with him, and it was just a thrilling meeting because he's Cajun, Louisiana, has a terrific background, terrific history. The genealogy is great. But he's active and he wants to do something, and he's relatively young, because anyone, I tell Donnie, everybody's young compared to us now, because he's just about ready to retire. And he said, I'm about ready to retire and I'd like to be more involved. Well, wow. Connor, would you like to have somebody in one of your camps saying, I want to be more involved?
I'd like to just be able to almost retire.
You won't have much money, I can tell you that. But you'll have a lot of fun.
Well, I'll have that 13th check to look forward to. But no, I would love to have people that are active as they want to be in the organization. When I joined the Masonic Lodge, I had an old man tell me, right after I forgot my first degree, he looked at me and he said, son, take this advice and apply it to everything. You will get in, or you will get out what you put in. And I wish every member would realize that with the SCV. If you want to see, your camp standing up and doing more, we have the tools available now. How much does it cost for a copy of the Defender?
The Southern Defender, about 37 cents.
I mean,
that's a generic one. We could do one particular for your camp, or your state, or your area, and it probably cost you 45 cents, but about 37 to 45 cents, depending on what kind you get.
But you know, how many people go to the doctor's office? How many people go to the dentist office? Or you know, you're sitting in the waiting room at the car dealership getting your oil changed. You know, it doesn't take that much to put one in your car, take it out of your car, and leave it on the table.
There you go. There you go.
mean, it's as simple as that. And of course, you can get more involved the more involved that you want to do. And if your camp's not doing anything and it's like they're in a rut, your camp should have election for officers. You know, if you want to see something, run for something.
There you
go. But anyway, well, guys, if nobody else has any questions in the chat, we're going to start wrapping it up. But I do have one thing that I want to announce that the producer pitched to me, and I said, okay. We've been talking for a lot of the night about the 3rd edition of The South is Right. And you can get those at the SCV store online. You can also get them at victoryflagsandmore.com. But at the National Reunion, Friday of the National Reunion, we're going to give away a copy of The South Was Right, and we're going to give away one of our Let's Bring Them Home shirts. If you haven't heard, General Nathan Bedford Forrest and his wife Mary Ann Montgomery Forrest are going to be reinterred September the 18th at headquarters, SCV headquarters. More details will come out about that later as they're available. We're doing this fundraising shirt to help bring them home. We're going to purchase the shirt for you. We're going to purchase the book for you. Pretty sure we can get it autographed for you from those two lovely gentlemen who've been our guests. The way to enter this giveaway is to email scvyouthOutreach@gmail.com. That's the official email for SCV Chat and Look Around the Confederation. Just email your name, your address, and your T-shirt size. You do not have to be present to win, but it is encouraged to be present to win. Just go ahead and, like I said, email us there. And what we'll do is we're going to cut off the entry for the drawing on the Monday of that week. I can't remember what date that is, but that Monday we're going to close it down. And then on Friday, my sister is turning 29 again. So that Friday, I've asked her if she will draw the name out of the hat for the lucky winner. So go ahead and enter in at scvyouthOutreach@gmail.com. I see that Donald Wright from Mississippi is that's the 19th. That he has already ordered a couple more of his shirts or of the shirts for himself. And if you want to order a shirt, go ahead and go to Victory Flags and More and order the shirt from there. 100% of the proceeds that we would receive from that are being donated to the Bring Him Home. Well, not so much fun, but the efforts to bring General and Mrs. Forrest to Elm Springs. So do that. Those shirts are limited edition. They're being printed as they are being made. So we do not have a stock of those in anywhere. Ray Shores at Victory Flags More, Mississippi, they are printing them as they're ordered. They're good quality shirts. Can't say enough about them, but on September the 18th, you'll not be able to buy those shirts anymore. So get those shirts, be a part of history, and let's bring him home.
Hey, Connor?
Yes, sir.
September 18th is a very special date for my twin brother.
Is that his birthday?
No, it's not his birthday. His best, good-looking twin brother was born that day.
Oh, okay.
I thought Donald was born that day.
Lord.
Oh, goodness. Well, that is a perfect day for a celebration after bringing them home. So,
when the commander told me that was the date, I didn't say anything. I said, "Wow, that's good. That's a perfect for us." I've had trouble forgetting that for a long time.
Well, it's a perfect birthday gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a reminder, Thursday we have Look Around the Confederation at 7:00 with Matt Singleton. Matt, who do you have on this week?
We have. Let me see here. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared for that. Come back to me in a second.
Harrison, who do you have on this week for Matt?
A nice man from Florida.
Sean McFay.
Yes.
And so let's tune in. Everybody tune in at 7. Who knows? You may see me make a special appearance towards the end of the night. May not. Probably won't. But let's do it. Ronnie and Donnie, thank y'all both so much.
Sean McFall. I'm sorry.
And I cannot wait to see y'all on. You will be seeing the Kennedy twins on again in the future. If not on this program, we'll be on Look Around the Confederation and maybe their own program in the future. Who knows? I said media empire. Not all imperialism is bad. But thank y'all again for coming on. Thank y'all all for watching. Just remember, think locally, act locally, and whatever you do, know Fumar in the elevator.